I'm Haley, and the week my grandpa died, my mom grabbed his will and announced everything would be split evenly. It sounded neat until I learned she'd been moving paperwork like it was hers. What I found in the real will ended her plan in one sentence. If you've lived something similar, share your experience in the comments. Hand sanitizer stung the cracks on my knuckles as I wiped down the last table at the Austin Physical Therapy Clinic. End of shift meant notes, lockup, and whatever I could cook in 10 minutes. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Is this Haley Steinfeld? Yes. This is St. David's calling about your grandfather, Robert. The nurse didn't waste words. He'd passed. Time of death. They could hold his belongings at the desk. I said, okay, because it was the only setting my voice had. I tossed my badge into my bag. My manager texted before I reached the door. Hey, who's covering your patients tomorrow? Then a second message. Call me. I drove straight to the funeral home because my mom had already chosen one. Diane Carter moved fast when there were forms to sign. She was already there, leaning over the counter, telling the director what would happen next. We'll do the service Tuesday, she said, and I'll handle the paperwork. He nodded, like she'd rescued him from chaos. I walked up and Diane hugged me with one arm, keeping the other tight around a manila envelope. Sweetheart, she said, you're shaking. Let me take this. After he died, my mom quickly took the will and announced that everything would be split evenly. Something about how cleanly she delivered it made my skin prickle. Can I see it? I asked. She pressed the envelope flat to her chest and smiled like this was a favor. Let me handle it, she said. You're upset. I'm asking to read it. It's fine, Haley. Where's the original? Diane blinked once. He signed it again, last week, and last week he'd been in a hospital bed, too weak to sit up without help. I didn't say that. I just watched the envelope. The funeral director slid a checklist across the counter. Diane grabbed it, circled a line with his pen, and read it out loud. Probate appointment, Monday, 9 a.m., Travis County. She folded the paper and tucked it away like a boarding pass. Keys flashed in her hand, my grandpa's keys. Those keys were supposed to hang by his back door. She gave them a little shake, then dropped them deep into her coat pocket. On the wall behind her, a sign said, out of order, under the security camera. Of course it did. The one spot you'd want recorded was the one that just happened to be broken. Watching that envelope vanish into her purse, the only thought I could manage was, if speed was a job, my mother should have worked for FedEx. Diane turned and walked out. Don't make a scene, she called, already halfway to the parking lot. Gravel crunched under my shoes. Her perfume hit as warning. My phone buzzed again. My manager, the director saying my name, the checklist trembling in my hand. I followed Diane through the doors, faster now, and she clicked her remote. Her SUV's trunk popped open as I reached the curb. Diane slid the envelope into the trunk like it was a casserole dish she didn't want anyone else touching. Get in, she said. I'm driving myself. Her mouth tightened, then she pressed the button again, and the trunk dropped shut. No goodbye, no pause. She climbed into the driver's seat and pulled out before I even stepped off the curb. By the time I got to her house, the family group chat was already on fire. My phone kept vibrating across the passenger seat like it was trying to crawl away. Aunt Renee. Diane said everything's being split evenly. That's the right thing. Cousin Mark. Good. No fighting. Uncle Troy. Your grandpa would have wanted peace. The messages stacked faster than I could read them. Diane had told the story first, and in families, first is basically the same as true. Her front door was cracked open like she'd been expecting a delivery. Inside, she had coffee out and paper plates lined up on the counter. It looked like a meeting and a wake had been mashed together. She didn't ask how I was. She pointed at a chair. Sit. Everyone's stressed. Aunt Renee hugged me and pulled back just enough to search my face, like she was checking for guilt. Diane took the spot at the head of the table. Okay, she said, we're doing this the fair way. Your grandfather's will says things get divided evenly, so nobody can say I played favorites. I set the funeral home checklist on the table. I asked to read it. Diane didn't blink, and I said, "You're emotional." I asked where the original was. Renee's eyebrows went up. That was apparently the wrong question. Diane sighed the way people sigh when they're explaining math to a dog. "He signed it again last week," she said. "So it's updated. End of discussion." Uncle Troy leaned back. "Haley, don't start." "I'm not starting," I said. "I'm asking." Diane turned to the room, palms up. "You all know how she is," she said. "She doesn't show anything. People think she's cold, but it's just her personality." Renee nodded like she'd been given permission to interpret me. Diane kept going. "She took care of him because that's what family does. You don't get a prize for that." My phone rang. My manager. I answered because rent doesn't stop for grief. "Haley," she said, voice tight, "you walked out. I'm sorry about your grandpa, but who's covering your patients tomorrow?" "I don't know yet." "We need to know," she said. "Please don't let personal stuff spill into the clinic." Personal stuff? Like probate court and people stealing paperwork. "I'll call you back," I said, and hung up before my voice could do anything embarrassing. Diane watched me put the phone down. "See," she said, like the call proved her point. "Life goes on. We handle things properly." Then my phone buzzed again. A text from her, even though she was 8 feet away. "Don't contact anyone. I'm handling everything." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Sure, she was handling everything, including my part. The meeting broke up with forced hugs and a lot of "let's not fight" said like a warning. I left before Diane could give me another script. Marisol met me at a little taco place off South Lamar, the kind with sticky tables and a line that moves too slowly because everyone changes their mind at the register. She slid into the booth across from me and didn't ask if I was okay. She asked the useful question. What did she take? The will. She says it's split evenly. She says he signed it last week. Marisol's mouth went flat. "Last week he was admitted," she said. "You told me. You said he couldn't sit up." "That's what I'm saying." Marisol pulled out her phone and started tapping. "Don't argue with her," she said. "Don't debate morals. Get documents." She counted on her fingers. Death certificate, funeral home intake forms. Ask who physically handed over the will, then find the estate attorney who drafted it. "I don't even know if there is one." "There is," she said. "People with money don't scribble that stuff on napkins." She angled her screen toward me, showing the hospital stay dates in the patient portal summary I'd had access to as family. "He was on heavy meds," she said. "No one signing updated anything in that condition without someone hovering." My stomach dropped, but my hands stayed busy. I tore open sauce packets I didn't need and lined them up. Marisol pointed at the time on my phone. "Monday, 9 a.m., she said. "Travis County Probate. Before that, you need to know where the real will is and who filed what." Outside, the sun was still up, which felt wrong. In the parking lot, I dug through my glove box until I found an old invoice from my grandpa's paperwork folder, a faded letterhead with a law office number. I called. An automated voice answered. "Thank you for calling. Our office closes at 5. My eyes flicked to the clock on the dash. Not even 4:30. The automated message was still talking when I pulled out of the taco lot. The address on the invoice sat under the phone number, downtown, close enough to make the light feel personal. I drove like every red light owed me money. At 4:47, I slid into a metered spot, grabbed the folder Marisol had shoved at me, and ran. The lobby door was unlocked, but the receptionist looked up like she'd already decided I was late. She tapped her watch and pointed to a sign that read 5 p.m. "I need 5 minutes with whoever handles wills." "Name?" she asked, already sliding a clipboard toward me. "Robert Carter," I said. "My grandfather." Her eyes flicked to the invoice, then to my face. "We don't release originals without the executor." "I'm not asking for the original," I said. "I'm asking if you have it." She hesitated, then typed fast. A printer whined. "He signed here 2 years ago," she said, and there were calls from Diane Carter about power of attorney. Hearing my mother's name in their system landed like a dropped plate. She lowered her voice. There's also a notary invoice dated last week from the hospital. The nurse's words, Diane's, he signed it again, and that dead hallway camera snapped into the same picture. The receptionist pushed a sticky note at me with the attorney's name and extension. He's in a meeting, she said, but call tomorrow. Tomorrow was Sunday. Monday was court. My phone lit up before I could argue. Diane. I answered. Where are you, she said. At the estate attorney's office, I said. Silence, then a softer tone. If you do something stupid, I'll tell everyone you used your grandpa. Don't go to his house, she said. I changed the locks myself yesterday. That was the moment the fair story turned into a checklist of control. I drove to my grandpa's place anyway because the medication log and his hospital bills were in the kitchen drawer. His house sat on the same street as always, but the front door had a shiny new deadbolt. I tried my key. Nothing. Curtains shifted across the street. A neighbor's porch light clicked on in daylight, which felt like a judgment. I called Diane, straight to voicemail. I knocked, then checked the back door. Same lock, same refusal. My hand hovered over the knob, then dropped hard. A patrol car rolled up slow, lights off, like this was routine. The officer stepped out and kept his hand near his belt. Ma'am, we got a call about someone trying to get into this house. I'm his granddaughter, I said, and offered my driver's license. He looked at it, then at the locked door. Do you have paperwork showing you belong here? The question landed wrong, but it was fair. No, I said, just memories and a set of keys that disappeared. He nodded once, wrote something, and handed me a trespass warning. Leave now, he said. Please, ma'am. I walked to my car holding that warning like it was a receipt for being related to the wrong person. The neighbor across the street watched from behind her blinds and didn't bother pretending otherwise. A missed call popped up from my manager again, another from Aunt Renee. I ignored both and opened the driver's door. The paper crinkled under my fingers. My phone buzzed with a new message. Diane, on time, like she'd been waiting for the officer to finish writing. The text was one line. You make your choices. You deal with them. My thumb hovered over reply. Replying would have meant playing her game, so the phone went face down in the cup holder. The key turned, engine started, and I backed out under the neighbor's stare. At the corner, I called Metasol with one hand and kept the other on the wheel. She picked up on the second ring. Tell me you didn't go to the house, she said. Locks are changed, I told her. Police gave me a trespass warning. There was a pause, then her voice sharpened. Good, keep that paper. Drive to my place. Now. Traffic thickened, and I merged anyway without looking back. Metasol's apartment complex had a security gate that never worked, which felt on brand for my week. She met me at the curb with her keys in one hand and my trespass warning in the other. Sit, she said. Don't call her. We move on paper now. She opened a folder on her kitchen table and slid my license, the warning, and the old invoice into neat stacks. First stop, the bank, Metasol said. If Diane filed anything, they'll freeze access. At the branch, the teller scanned my ID and typed for too long. Her smile stayed in place, but her voice went formal. I'm sorry, she said. This account is restricted pending verification of the personal representative. I'm paying for his funeral, I said. I'm not trying to buy a boat. The teller didn't laugh. She rotated her screen, showing a note and a case number I didn't recognize. We received notice from the court, she said. Until that's resolved, we can't release funds. Marisol asked for a printout, and the teller handed one over like it was radioactive. Outside, my phone rang again. This time, it was my manager, and she didn't bother with small talk. HR needs you to come in, she said. There was an incident with police at a private residence. It wasn't an incident, I said. It was my grandfather's house. We're placing you on leave while we sort it out, she said. Please don't contact patients. An hour later, I was in a glass-walled office at the clinic, staring at a form that said administrative leave in bold. HR didn't ask about Grandpa. They asked whether I'd been trespassed and if there was an ongoing dispute. I signed because arguing would have turned into a note in my file. My manager avoided eye contact the whole time. The call ended, and the sidewalk suddenly felt crowded, even though no one was near us. Marisol drove. I held the bank printout in my lap and watched the courthouse get closer. In the probate lobby, a clerk took one look at my paperwork and pointed at a kiosk. "Take a number," she said. "Next." A manila packet waited on a side table with my name misspelled on the label. Diane had filed a petition for temporary administration, complete with a statement about me being unstable and financially motivated. Attached were 2 witness letters. One was from Aunt Renee. "Haley never shows emotion," Renee wrote. "She's always been calculating." The second was from a cousin's husband I'd met twice, praising Diane for keeping the family together. Diane stood 10 feet away in the hall, dressed for church, talking to a woman in a blazer who kept nodding. When she noticed me, her mouth made a sad little curve, like she was practicing. "Don't do this," she said, soft enough that only I could hear. "You're embarrassing yourself." Marisol stepped between us, not blocking, just existing. "You already told the story," Marisol said. "We're here for documents." The clerk called my number. At the counter, I asked to see the inventory of my grandfather's lockbox. The clerk flipped through a file and slid a form forward. "It's been accessed," she said, or sealed, depending on the judge's order. The line for contents was blank. No medication log, no hospital bills, nothing. My folder suddenly felt like a joke, a bank printout, a trespass warning, and a funeral checklist. Back in the lobby, Marisol kept her voice low. "She's not winning on truth," she said. "She's winning on process." "Stop chasing her," Marisol added. "Play the right field. Records, timestamps, certified copies." A notification buzzed on my phone. Diane had started another group text, this time with a prayer hands gif and a line about protecting Grandpa's legacy. Marisol tapped the screen off and put the phone back in my pocket like it was evidence. At the service window, I asked for an emergency filing form, and a clerk handed me a thin packet without looking up. A digital board blinked numbers. My turn crawled forward. Another buzz came, this time from an unknown number. The text preview read, "Hearing moved up, tomorrow, 8 a.m. My number flashed. I stepped. The clerk slid the emergency packet under the glass and pointed to the signature line. My hand moved like it belonged to someone else. Marisol stood close enough to read over my shoulder, not close enough to be accused of speaking for me. "Fill it out tonight," the clerk said. "If you want it on the docket for the morning, you need to submit before the drop box closes." Outside the courthouse, air felt heavy and stale. Marisol walked me to my car and kept her voice practical. "Go home," she said. "Eat something. Then we build a file." The drive back to my apartment took 15 minutes, which was long enough for Aunt Renee to leave a voicemail and for my manager to email a PDF about my leave. I didn't open either. The phone went on the passenger seat, screen down, like a misbehaving pet. At my place, shoes came off in the doorway and paperwork covered the kitchen table. The trespass warning sat on top, as if it wanted to be seen. I lined up everything I had: death certificate request form, funeral home checklist, bank restriction notice, Diane's petition copy, and the clinic's leave letter. It looked pathetic, like a kid's science fair display. The thing missing was the envelope Diane hid, the one detail every document circled. For years, the rule with Diane had been simple: keep the peace. Don't challenge her in public. Let her talk first and fix it later. That worked when the stakes were holidays and hurt feelings. It worked when she rearranged my pantry because she couldn't stand the mess. It did not work when she was rearranging a will. The mistake wasn't asking questions. The mistake was asking them where she could turn them into a character flaw. Every time I tried to prove I wasn't greedy, she got to stand there and say I was. She didn't need truth. She needed me in the role. Marisol called while I was stapling pages like staples could hold my life together. "I talked to someone at that law office," she said. "The attorney who drafted your grandpa's will is Daniel Klein. His address is on West 12th. "Will he talk to me?" I asked. "He'll talk if you show up when they open and you bring proof you're family," she said. "And Haley, your grandpa asked for a certified copy. He was worried about drama." That detail landed harder than all the group chat messages. Grandpa hadn't been imagining things. He'd been planning for Diane. "What do I need?" I asked. "Your ID, his death certificate, anything showing you handled his care," Marisol said. "Medication logs, appointment summaries, bills. Also, bring the trespass warning. It proves she locked you out." I stared at the empty spot on the table where the medication log should have been. "She took the keys," I said. "Then we replace the record," Marisol said. "Request the hospital summary, print the portal pages, grab pharmacy receipts if you have them." The printer in my closet was the kind that always jammed when I was already late. Tonight, it behaved, spitting out appointment screenshots and discharge notes. I wrote a checklist on a legal pad and taped it to the folder. I.D. Death certificate request, hospital records, bank notice, petition copy, trespass warning, funeral forms. At 11:40, Marisol texted one more thing, a screenshot of Daniel Klein's office hours and the receptionist's name. No pep talk, just a target. I drove back downtown to drop my emergency filing in the courthouse box. The parking lot was nearly empty, and the building looked indifferent, which I appreciated. Paperwork didn't care if I cried. Back home, I set my clothes out for the morning, plugged in my phone, and opened the alarm app. 5:30 a.m. went on the screen. Another for 5:45, because apparently I didn't trust myself anymore. My thumb hovered over Daniel Klein's number, then pressed call. The line rang until it clicked into voicemail. "You've reached Klein & Associates," a calm voice said. "Please leave a message." My name came out steady anyway, and the folder stayed open on the table as I waited for the beep. The voicemail beeped, and I left my name, my number, and nothing else. At 5:58 a.m., I was already in the parking lot outside Klein & Associates, folder on the passenger seat, coffee untouched. The door opened at 6, and the receptionist recognized me from the day before. "You're early," she said. "I'm desperate," I said. She led me to a small conference room and disappeared with my ID and the hospital printouts Marisol had me grab. A man in a blue tie came in 10 minutes later, holding a thin file like it weighed nothing. "Haley Steinfeld?" he asked. "Daniel Klein," he added, shaking my hand once and sitting. "I'm sorry about your grandfather," he said. He slid a document across the table, stamped and signed, and I knew before I read a word that my mother had lied. "This is a certified copy of the will," Klein said. "The original is stored in our vault. Your grandfather insisted on that." My eyes dropped to the line with the number, because money always looks louder on paper. "Estate value listed here is $4.85 million, he said. Then I read the sentence that made my throat close. "All assets to my granddaughter, Haley Steinfeld, because she was the only person who cared for me to the end," Klein read, tapping the paragraph. He didn't look surprised at my silence. He looked like he'd expected my family. "Your mother contacted us 3 times in the last month," he said. "She asked about power of attorney and representing the estate before your grandfather passed." He opened the file again and pulled out an invoice. "Mobile notary, St. David's, last week," he said. "That aligns with what you were told. It also raises questions about capacity and undue influence." So the broken hallway recorder, the rushed fair speech, the new locks, none of it was luck. Klein handed me a letter on firm letterhead confirming where the original was kept and when the certified copy had been issued. "Chain of custody matters," he said. "If someone claims a newer document exists, this helps the court sort fact from noise." I thanked him, signed a release for the hospital records, and walked out with the certified copy sealed in an envelope. Marisol met me at the courthouse steps and took one look at the paperwork. "You got it," she said. Before I could answer, a clerk handed Diane's attorney a fresh packet and called our case. Diane stood in the hallway with a man I'd never seen, both of them dressed like they'd slept. On the top page, I read the words "lost will" and "newly discovered instrument." A cousin's husband pointed at me and told the attorney, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I saw her carrying papers from Robert's house," he said. Marisol's jaw tightened, but she stayed still. I walked to the intake window, slid Klein's letter and the sealed certified copy through, and asked for it to be logged. "We'll file it," the clerk said, stamping the receipt. But the judge will address the alleged newer document first. Another sheet listed Diane as proposed temporary administrator, with a handwritten note accusing me of hiding the original to take everything. The clerk didn't meet my eyes when she said the hearing had been moved up. Marisol leaned in. "Don't react," she said. "Let them talk." She tapped the certified seal with one finger hard, once. I pulled out the hospital summary and pharmacy list, the ones showing sedation and delirium checks, and clipped them behind Klein's letter. A woman from the clerk's office asked for my phone number, then asked if I had counsel. "No," I said, "not yet." She gave me a pamphlet on pro se filings like it was a consolation prize and pointed to the bench. "Wait there until you're called," she said. I sat on the wooden bench, folder on my knees, and watched Diane whisper into her lawyer's ear like she was placing a takeout order. My name got mangled over the speaker, and I stood when the bailiff waved. A court secretary announced, flat and fast, "We'll address the alleged newer document first." The bailiff held the door and waved me forward. Diane sat at the petitioner's table with her attorney. Marisol took a seat behind me and kept her hands folded. The judge looked over the file. "Ms. Carter, you're requesting temporary administration, and you're alleging a newer document?" "Yes, Your Honor," Diane said. "I just want what's fair." Her attorney stood. "We believe the decedent executed an updated instrument shortly before his death. The original cannot be located." He glanced toward me. "And we have concerns the granddaughter may be withholding it." I walked to the podium when the judge nodded. The clerk took my envelope and stamped the receipt. "Certified copy of the will," I said, "and a letter from Daniel Klein confirming the original is stored at his office." Diane's head snapped up. Her mask slipped. "That can't be right," she said. "She's manipulating this." Her attorney opened my certified copy, scanned the first page, and set it down like it had teeth. "Your Honor, this appears to be an older will." "It's the will," I said. "Read the distribution clause." The judge's eyes moved down the page. $4,850,000, she read, not looking up. "All assets to the granddaughter, because she was the only person who cared for him to the end." Diane let out a small sound that was supposed to be grief. It came out as offense. "That's not fair," she said. "I'm his daughter." Her attorney tried again. "We're saying there was a newer document." "Then produce it," the judge said. "Who notarized it? Where was it signed?" Diane looked at her attorney instead of answering. "We don't have to drag a dying man's medical details into court," she said. "Haley's making this ugly." The judge leaned back. "Ms. Carter, you're the one alleging a replacement will. Details matter." I slid the mobile notary invoice and the hospital summary onto the clerk's counter. The clerk walked them to the bench. "That's the notary charge from St. David's," I said, "dated the week he was hospitalized and heavily medicated." Diane's attorney skimmed it, then the medication list. His shoulders tightened. "We would need time to review," he said. "Time is what you've been buying," Marisol muttered, low enough that only I heard it. The judge held up a hand. "This court isn't a delay machine," she said. "Mr. Klein's letter establishes custody of the original. Your invoice suggests an attempt to create leverage when the decedent was vulnerable." Diane started to speak and caught herself, then pushed anyway. "So she gets everything and I get nothing?" She turned toward the benches like there was an audience to win. "I raised her. I paid bills. I'm being punished for needing help." The judge pointed to the last page. "There's also a no contest provision," she said. She read it out loud, slow. "If anyone attempts to contest this will, their share is revoked." Diane blinked. "That's not—" Her attorney touched her arm, too late. The judge asked, calm as if ordering lunch, "So you are contesting?" Diane opened her mouth, then looked at me, waiting for me to rescue her from her own words. I didn't move. Her attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client—" "She filed a petition contesting the will and seeking control of the estate," the judge said. "That triggers the clause." Diane's face went red. "This is a trick," she hissed. "It's a document," the judge replied. She signed the order and handed it to the clerk. "Petition denied. Temporary administration denied. Ms. Steinland is recognized under the will pending probate. Ms. Carter, you will turn over any estate papers, keys, or property you removed. Failure will result in further action." The bailiff opened the door. People stood. Diane rushed past my shoulder in the hallway, close enough that I could smell her perfume again. "You think you won," she whispered. "You just proved you're exactly what they say." Marisol kept walking. The parking lot heat hit, and my car was 10 steps away when a voice called out behind us. "Ms. Carter," the bailiff said, "come sign for these orders." Diane spun around. Diane's heels tapped toward the bailiff, and Marisol kept steering me to my car like she was guiding a patient off a treadmill. "Don't look back," she said. "I'm not," I said, unlocking the door. My phone buzzed. A new text from Diane. "We're not done." Marisol snorted. She's allergic to endings. 2 days later, the bank called. The same teller who wouldn't hand me a dime for the funeral greeted me like a different person. "Ms. Steinfeld, your restriction has been lifted," she said. "Congratulations. Sorry, I mean condolences." I signed forms, showed the court order, and watched numbers unfreeze. Paperwork slid across the desk the way grief never does. When she asked what I wanted to do with the estate account, I said the sentence I'd practiced. Open a separate trust account. No joint access. She nodded like I'd ordered a latte, not a boundary. That afternoon, Daniel Klein forwarded me the court's notice of compliance. Diane had 10 days to surrender any keys and estate documents. When she didn't, a constable showed up at her place with another packet. Renee later told me Diane had screamed in the driveway, then gone silent when the constable asked her to sign. A week after that, Diane left me a voicemail. "This lawyer is bleeding me," she said. "You're enjoying this." Marisol saved the voicemail in case Diane got creative again. I didn't call back. I bought a new SIM card, changed my number, and created a plain email address used only for probate. The old one auto-replied with Klein's contact info. The first checks went to boring places: the funeral home, the hospital, the pharmacy. Every time I paid something off, another relative texted, asking when we were meeting to talk things through. I stopped answering and had Daniel Klein's office send a standard reply. "Future communication will go through counsel," the email read. At my grandpa's house, a locksmith swapped the shiny deadbolt Diane installed for a new one under my name. He handed me 3 keys and asked if I wanted extras. "Not for family," I said. He didn't ask follow-up questions. The lockbox was gone. The hook by the back door was empty. Drawers looked rummaged. Still, the house held pieces she couldn't scoop up in a purse. I found Grandpa's old spiral notebook wedged behind the microwave cart, the one where he'd written down medication times in block letters because his hands shook. I sat it in my folder beside a photocopy of the no contest clause. One was love, one was insurance. A week later, Aunt Renee hosted a small dinner to reset. Diane showed up in a blazer, chin lifted, ready for her speech. Everyone kept eating. Diane said, "I just want my daughter back." Renee coughed and asked Mark about his new job. Mark launched into a story about traffic like it was breaking news. Diane tried again. "This family has been torn apart." Uncle Troy stood and offered to refill drinks. There wasn't a scene. There also wasn't a stage. Diane's mouth kept opening, then closing, like a car alarm that finally ran out of battery. She left early, and no one chased her to the driveway. Marisol met me the next morning to finish packing Grandpa's closets. We worked fast, donating what we could, boxing photos and letters. At the bottom of a dresser drawer, I found the hospital bracelet from his last admission. I threw it away without ceremony. The only thing I kept for myself was his cracked watch and the notebook. At the cemetery, I didn't bring Diane. Nobody asked why. The pastor said a few lines, and I nodded, because that's what you do when words aren't enough. When it was over, Marisol handed me the car keys. "You okay to drive?" she asked. I'm okay to leave, I said. Back at the house, I locked the door for the last time, put the 3 new keys into a small box, and zipped my folder until the teeth met. On my phone, Diane's number still sat under favorites, like a bad shortcut. My thumb hovered, then hit remove, and the screen shifted as I stepped off the porch.